Hi, my name is Robert Everett. I am in my 10th year teaching at the secondary level. Work for two districts, and both those districts have quite varying needs. I spent 8 years as an eighth grade social studies teacher, and my current position, I'm teaching 11th and 12th grade AP economics. Looking at differentiation, this is an attempt to really address each individual learner. All learners are going to learn differently and have a unique set of interests and skills. So differentiation really tries to address those different needs of the students. I know for my eighth grade, the time in my eighth grade, there were no English language learners classes specifically, or students with IEPs classes specifically, or even honors classes for some high level learners. So I had 30 students that really ranged all across those different areas. And so differentiation was a must. Even looking at in my second year as a 11th and 12th grade AP economics teacher, again, those are students who sign up for this, who are older, who are usually very aware of their learning skills and abilities. Um, and after my first year teaching, I've used more and more differentiation this year because even though they all are college bound students and very, very high achieving students, and they selected to take this course, they still learn very differently, and differentiation is even still needed in that environment. As we look at differentiation, the relationship to the brain, really with differentiation and brain-based learning, this is going to kind of be a perfect combination that kind of looks at individual growth as well as kind of promotes a deeper, more lasting understanding of the content. With it, we have an increased engagement. Overall, we see that, if it's more geared towards their interest, that's going to lead to kind of that next part, that improved retention and recall. If we can incorporate kind of more interest, increase engagement, we're going to have longer lasting learning based on emotion, based on kind of desires. And lastly, there's a facilitation of individual learning styles. Again, students start to kind of understand and process their own learning styles and develop a deeper interest in engagement through their own individual learning styles. Two different strategies I often use. The first one is a choice board. This one I like to use for project-based learning. It just allows the students various choices to kind of different types of projects to choose from to reach the same learning target. Usually I base them on some type of skill or interest. It could be something like group work versus individual, or maybe speaking, a presentation versus written response. It could be maybe more art-based or computer-based, but there's usually some sort of choice that kind of has, you know, a different skill or interest involved. Really, why I like this is it allows the students to feel like they can take ownership in their own learning. It's going to increase their engagement kind of by focusing on their overall interest. Another strategy, probably the one I use mostly is or most often is mixed ability grouping. With this, again, this is just having group usually for a project that is selected, and that's kind of my big teaching tip with this is it takes a lot of planning. Roles have to be established. There's a very long process with selecting the groups because you want students with a variety of skills and abilities. Overall in the classroom, a lot of times if you just like let the kids pick their groups, they're gonna work with just their friends and everything. And with you selecting the groups based on mixed ability is going to provide kind of more inclusion in the classroom and a more well-rounded and welcoming classroom in the long run. Um, but with this as well, I think the biggest thing is when students work together in mixed abilities, they can see how others have certain skills, certain abilities, and how they're going to approach certain problems in a task. And I think they can learn from each other through that process. Now, kind of shifting gears from differentiation, looking at engagement. Again, engagement is something we can probably all see in students and everything, but what we're looking for is students that are engaged and enticed by the work. As things get difficult, they're going to be excited about kind of reaching those accomplishments, and it's going to build more persistence. As we look at the principles of keeping students engaged, really kind of pushing them through visual cues, kind of like having some, different writing that pops out to you to really stress some important areas that they need to focus on. We need to make sure we can have all students respond, have an open environment, And that kind of goes to the last part here, having a welcoming environment where all students feel comfortable responding, creating low stress situation. They're going to not be as comfortable in a pop quiz out of nowhere than they would in a formative assessment game where they can really show what they know. Kind of in the relationship with the brain, uh, classroom learning can stimulate different chemicals in the brain that can be released. As we look at serotonin, this is going to be a mood regulator. With this, having that positive, welcoming environment is going to really increase or decrease those levels to where people are, feeling more comfortable. With dopamine, that reward that promotes learning and new information that encourages people to keep on the process. Again, constant feedback will help with that. With cortisol, it's a stress hormone. Again, how many times do kids walk into the classroom where something happens in the hall and now it's a fight or flight feeling, and having a welcome environment will kind of help reduce those cortisol levels. Then norepinephrine, this is going to help direct their focus and will again be able to target their learning a little bit. As we look at kind of some strategies here for engagement, one of the big ones I use often is learning through play. Again, kind of having some sort of goal, having some competition, using that as a motivator really gets kids engaged. It helps work, it helps with cooperation, working, and teamwork. Even in my, with 17 and 18-year-olds, in my first year teaching AP economics, I did not have many games and many competitions. And, the kids thrive on that. They got to that level of education through competition. They love it. And so that's something that in my second year teaching, I've really worked in more of. Uh, Also, learning through play, it really leads into discovery learning. There's two activities I had, one with my economics group and one with my eighth grade history that kind of stick out to me. Um, Both of them are very similar. They're kind of simulations where it seems like a game, it seems like fun, and then all of a sudden they both have that aha moment, and they learn that learning target. It just jumps out at them, and they always retain it really well with that. Then the last one, and again, this one maybe seems a little counterintuitive, but brain breaks. Our short-term memory, our working memory has limitations. Students can only focus for so long. And again, it will increase with the older students and decrease the time with the younger students. But either way, um, they always need a break because we overload that working memory. Even in my AP economics classroom, those students that is supposed to be designed like a college level class, and sometimes we do have very long lectures. I will use brain breaks very often just to give them a break to rest their mind, to kind of refocus and work through some of that working memory. So that way we can get back to, the major concepts of the class. I'll do this by talking about good news from the weekend or having a turn and talk opportunity with their group, something to kind of get them off of that off of the academics. Now, the big thing with this, again, you need to be very intentional with the process. We can't just have like, hey, let's take a break for 5 minutes. No, explain to them that this is done because we are doing some intense work and your brains actually need a break on this one. And so take this and don't go use this time for homework. Use this to actually rest your brain for 5 minutes, then we'll get back to it. So again, very being intentional with it is very important. Lastly, these are some references that I have. Thank you.